The Zephyrian cruiser Astral Dawn drifted through the void like a dying whale, its hull scarred by plasma burns and meteor impacts. Commander Veltar pressed his six-fingered hand against the bridge viewport, watching enemy ships swarm around the refugee convoy like metallic vultures. Behind them, the homeworld of New Kepler burned in the distance, its atmosphere glowing orange through the smoke of 100 burning cities. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Morning Star and the Celestial Hope," reported Navigator Chulin, her voice barely above a whisper. The young Zephyrian's normally blue skin had turned pale gray with fear. "The Devourers have broken through our defensive line." Veltar's mandibles clicked together in frustration. 3 months ago, the Galactic Coalition had been winning this war. The Devourers, those biomechanical nightmares from the void between galaxies, had seemed like just another threat to be contained and eliminated. But they had underestimated their enemy's hunger. The Devourers didn't just want territory or resources, they consumed entire worlds, leaving behind nothing but empty husks floating in space. "How many civilian ships remain in the convoy?" Veltar asked, though he dreaded the answer. 17, sir. Down from 43 when we started the evacuation." Chulin's voice cracked. The Haven's Rest was carrying 12,000 refugees from the northern continents. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of failing life support systems. Through the viewport, Veltar watched as another civilian transport exploded in a brilliant flash of white light. The Devourer's ships moved like living creatures, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent veins. They didn't just destroy their enemies, they absorbed them, incorporating the raw materials into their ever-growing fleet. "Sir, incoming transmission from Coalition Command," announced Communications Officer Hexera, his tentacles dancing across the control console. "It's Admiral Kothrak himself." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the weathered face of the Draconian Admiral. His scales had lost their lustrous sheen, and deep circles ringed his reptilian eyes. Behind him, the Coalition's primary fleet was visible through his ship's viewport, but Veltar could see that even their mighty dreadnoughts were taking heavy damage. "Commander Veltar," Admiral Kothrak's voice rumbled through the speakers. "I'm ordering all remaining evacuation convoys to fall back to the Outer Rim. The core systems are lost. Admiral, with respect, we won't make it to the Outer Rim. Half our ships are critically damaged, and we've got 17,000 civilians who can't defend themselves." Veltar's voice remained steady despite the chaos around them. "What about the reinforcements? The other Coalition fleets?" The Admiral's silence stretched long enough that Veltar wondered if the transmission had been cut. When Kothrak finally spoke, his words carried the weight of absolute defeat. "There are no reinforcements coming, Commander. The Andromedan's home fleet was destroyed at the Battle of Proxima Gate. The crystalline collective ships were dissolved by some new Devourer weapon that turns their crystal hulls into soup. Even the mighty Titan core fell at the Horsehead Nebula." The Admiral paused, his clawed hands gripping the arms of his command chair. "We're the last organized resistance in this sector." On the tactical display, red icons representing Devourer ships continued to multiply. They seemed to spawn from the very darkness of space itself, emerging from tears and reality that science couldn't explain. Each ship was unique, a grotesque fusion of organic tissue and stolen technology from their victims. Some resembled massive jellyfish with metallic stingers, others looked like mechanical spiders the size of moons, their legs ending in particle beam cannons. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission on the old Coalition emergency frequency," Hexera announced suddenly. It's in an unknown language, but the computer is trying to translate." "Put it through," Veltar ordered, hoping against hope that some Coalition fleet had survived their reports. Static filled the bridge speakers, followed by a voice speaking in harsh, guttural tones. Gradually, the translation matrix began to make sense of the words. "This is General Sarah Mitchell of the United Earth Defense Force, broadcasting on all Coalition frequencies. Any surviving Coalition forces, please respond. We are en route to your position with a full battle group. Repeat, human reinforcements are inbound." The bridge crew exchanged glances of confusion. In all their databases, there was no record of any species called humans or any world named Earth. The Coalition had been thorough in their surveys of the galaxy. How could an entire civilization have escaped their notice? "This is Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian vessel Astral Dawn," he responded, deciding that mysterious help was better than no help at all. "We are escorting civilian refugees and are under heavy attack by Devourer forces. If you truly have military capabilities, we desperately need assistance." "Copy that, Commander. We've got your position locked. Hang tight, the cavalry is coming." Before Veltar could ask what a cavalry was, new contacts appeared on the long-range sensors. The sensor operator, a multi-eyed mantoid named Kliktar, stared at his instruments in disbelief. "Sir, I'm reading 47 ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Their energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. They're heading straight for the Devourer fleet." On the main screen, the newcomers resolved into view. The human ships were angular and brutal, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. They moved with purpose and coordination, but what struck Veltar most was their relative size. They were smaller than Coalition dreadnoughts, yet something about their approach made the Devourer fleet hesitate. "All civilian vessels, this is General Mitchell. Break formation and head for the outer system. We'll keep the bad guys busy." The human fleet split into 3 groups with military precision. The largest group, consisting of heavy cruisers and battleships, moved directly toward the main Devourer force. A second group of smaller, faster ships began flanking maneuvers that would have impressed even Coalition tactical analysts. The third group, medium-sized vessels with unusual configurations, positioned themselves between the refugee convoy and the enemy. "Commander," Chulin whispered, "look at their weapons signatures." The human ships opened fire, and space erupted in light. But these weren't the energy weapons the Coalition was familiar with. The humans used kinetic projectiles, massive chunks of metal accelerated to incredible velocities. When these projectiles struck the Devourer ships, they didn't just damage them, they punched clean through, leaving gaping holes that vented atmosphere and organic fluids into space. More surprising was how the Devourer ships reacted. For the first time since the war began, Veltar saw them retreat from an engagement. The biomechanical horrors that had consumed dozens of worlds suddenly found themselves outmatched by these unknown humans. "This is impossible," breathed Tactical Officer Zexman. "The Devourers have adaptive shielding. They should be able to counter any weapon system within minutes of first contact." But the human weapons weren't just kinetic projectiles. As the battle intensified, the humans deployed weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. One human destroyer fired something that looked like a contained black hole, which consumed an entire Devourer capital ship in seconds. Another vessel launched what appeared to be small suns that exploded with the force of stellar cores. "How are they doing this?" Veltar asked no one in particular. "Our scientists said that level of weaponization was theoretically impossible." "Sir," Hexera interrupted, "the humans are hailing us again." General Mitchell's voice came through clearly now, no longer distorted by distance. "Commander Veltar, we're going to need you and your convoy to jump to these coordinates." Data streamed across their navigation console. "There's a safe harbor there, planet called Haven's Gate. It's under human protection now." "General, how do you know about Coalition safe harbors? And how did you develop weapons capable of defeating the Devourers?" There was a pause before Mitchell responded, and, when she did, her voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. "Let's just say we've been watching this war for a while, Commander. And humans, well, we specialize in making things that kill efficiently." As if to emphasize her point, the human fleet executed a maneuver that violated everything Veltar knew about space combat. Instead of maintaining distance and exchanging fire, the human ships charged directly into the Devourer formation. At close range, they deployed boarding pods, small craft that latched onto enemy hulls like metallic parasites. "They're boarding the Devourer ships," Kliktar announced, his multiple eyes wide with shock. "Who boards a Devourer ship? The interior atmospheres are toxic to every known species." The answer came minutes later when the boarded Devourer vessels began exploding from within. Whatever the humans were doing inside those ships, it was devastatingly effective. The Devourer fleet, which had seemed invincible just an hour ago, was being systematically dismantled by these mysterious human warriors. "All Coalition vessels, begin your jump to Haven's Gate," General Mitchell ordered. "We'll finish cleaning up here." As the Astral Dawn prepared for hyperspace, Veltar watched the battle's conclusion on his rear sensors. The human fleet had lost only 3 ships, while the Devourer force was completely annihilated. In the 3 months since the invasion began, no Coalition force had achieved anything close to such a decisive victory. "Sir," Chulin said softly, "what do you think these humans want? Why would they help us?" Veltar didn't answer immediately. He was thinking about the general's words, "We've been watching this war for a while." That implied the humans had been aware of the Coalition's existence long before making contact. It suggested they had deliberately remained hidden until this moment of crisis. As the stars stretched into lines and hyperspace claimed them, Veltar found himself both grateful and deeply unsettled. The humans had saved them, yes, but who saved the galaxy by accident? The precision of their attack, the advanced nature of their weapons, the casual way they had destroyed what seemed like an unstoppable enemy, all of it suggested that humanity was far more dangerous than the Devourers could ever be. The question that haunted him as they traveled through hyperspace was simple: if humans were this powerful, why had they remained hidden? And, more importantly, what did they want now that they had revealed themselves? Behind them, in the wreckage of the Devourer fleet, human salvage vessels moved through the debris like scavengers. But they weren't just collecting scrap metal, they were harvesting something specific from the destroyed ships. Something that glowed with an eerie, pulsing light that seemed to respond to human touch. In the darkness of space, other human fleets were converging on Coalition territory. Not as liberators or allies, but as something far more complex. Something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what humanity would do next. Haven's Gate hung in space like a jewel, its surface covered in sprawling cities that gleamed under the light of twin suns. But, as the Coalition refugee convoy approached, Commander Veltar realized this wasn't the safe harbor he remembered from the databases. The orbital defenses surrounding the planet were unlike anything he'd ever seen, in massive stations that looked more like fortresses than typical defensive platforms. "Sir, we're receiving docking instructions," announced Hexera. "The humans have assigned us berths in their primary orbital facility." Through the viewport, Veltar watched as human ships patrolled the system with mechanical precision. Each vessel moved with purpose, their crews clearly following established protocols. This wasn't a hastily assembled defense, it was a mature military installation that had been operating for years. "How long have they been here?" whispered Chulin, voicing the question everyone was thinking. The docking bay they entered was enormous, easily capable of holding their entire convoy with space to spare. As the Astral Dawn settled onto the designated platform, Veltar saw human technicians approaching with equipment designed for dozens of different species. They knew exactly how to interface with Zephyrian systems, draconian power grids, and even the exotic energy matrices used by the Crystalline Collective. "Commander Veltar?" a voice called out as the airlock cycled open. "I'm Colonel Sarah Chen, Haven's Gate Station Commander." Veltar's first sight of a human in person was jarring. They looked almost like a dozen other bipedal species in the galaxy, but there was something different in their eyes and intensity that suggested they were constantly evaluating threats and opportunities. Colonel Chen wore a simple uniform marked with insignia that meant nothing to Coalition databases, yet she carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to absolute authority. "Colonel Chen," Veltar replied, stepping through the airlock with his senior staff. "I must thank you for your assistance. Without your intervention, those refugees would have been lost." "Just doing our job, Commander. But we need to talk, all of you Coalition officers together. There are things you need to understand about the current situation." Chen led them through corridors that hummed with activity. Human personnel moved with purpose alongside beings Veltar didn't recognize, species that weren't in any Coalition database. Some appeared to be cybernetic constructs, others seemed to phase in and out of visibility, and a few looked like they might not even be from this dimension. "Colonel, if I may ask," Veltar said carefully, "how long has humanity been aware of the Coalition's existence?" Chen glanced back at him with something that might have been amusement. Commander, humanity has been aware of galactic civilization for about 200 years. We just chose not to make contact until now. The briefing room they entered contained holographic displays showing the current state of the galaxy. Red zones marked Devourer-controlled territory, but what shocked Veltar was how much of the map was marked in blue human space. It covered nearly a quarter of the galaxy, including regions the Coalition had never successfully explored. Ladies, gentlemen, and varied sentient beings, Chen began as other Coalition survivors filed in. Welcome to the real galactic situation. I'm afraid your governments haven't been entirely honest with you about humanity's role in current events. Admiral Kothrak, who had arrived on a damaged dreadnought, leaned forward. What do you mean, Colonel? Our first contact protocols would have detected any civilization of your apparent size. Admiral, your first contact protocols were designed by us. Chen activated the holographic display, showing technical schematics that looked suspiciously familiar. Humanity has been guiding Coalition development for the past century. Every major technological breakthrough, every strategic decision that led to the formation of the Coalition itself, we've had a hand in it. The room erupted in shocked voices from a dozen different species. Veltar felt his mandibles click involuntarily as the implications sank in. You're saying the Coalition is a human creation? Not exactly. Your species developed naturally and formed alliances organically. But, when certain cosmic threats became apparent, we decided some guidance was necessary. Chen manipulated the display, showing star charts dating back decades. The Devourer invasion was predicted by our deep space monitoring stations 40 years ago. Everything since then has been preparation. Captain Mordex of the Titan Corps, his massive frame barely fitting in the provided chair, spoke in his booming voice. If you knew the Devourers were coming, why didn't you warn us? Why let millions die before revealing yourselves? Chen's expression grew somber. Captain, would your governments have listened to warnings from a species they'd never met? Would the Coalition have unified against a threat they couldn't see? Sometimes people need to face disaster before they're willing to accept help. That's remarkably cynical, observed Dr. Yilneth, the mantoid xenobiologist who had survived the evacuation of the Spiral Academy. You allowed entire worlds to burn for strategic purposes. We saved who we could, Chen replied firmly. Our covert rescue operations extracted over 50 million beings from Devourer-attacked worlds. They're all here, on Haven's Gate and similar facilities throughout human space. But, we couldn't act openly without compromising the larger strategy. The displays shifted to show fleet movements throughout the galaxy. Veltar realized that human ships had been present at nearly every major battle of the war, but they had remained cloaked or disguised. They had been watching, learning, and occasionally intervening when specific individuals or pieces of technology needed to be preserved. What exactly are the Devourers? Asked Science Officer Zethara from the destroyed research vessel Quantum Hope. Our analysis suggested they're not from this galaxy. They're not from this dimension, Chen corrected. The Devourers are scouts for something much larger, entities that consume entire realities. This invasion is just the beginning. She activated a new display showing dimensional readings that made several Coalition scientists gasp in recognition. The Devourers weren't just using advanced technology, they were tearing holes between parallel universes, allowing their masters to feed on the fundamental forces that held reality together. Humanity encountered them approximately 300 years ago, Chen continued. They consumed our home system Earth, Mars, all the worlds where our species first developed. We barely escaped with a few 100,000 survivors. The room fell silent. Admiral Kothrak was the first to speak. Then, you're refugees, like us? We were. But, we learned from that defeat. Spent 2 centuries studying the Devourers, learning their weaknesses, developing weapons specifically designed to fight them. Every human alive today was born with one purpose, to ensure that what happened to Earth never happens to anyone else. Veltar began to understand the intensity he'd seen in human eyes. They weren't just another spacefaring species, they were the survivors of an apocalypse, shaped by generations of preparation for revenge. The weapons you used against the Devourer fleet, he said slowly, they're not just advanced technology. They're specifically designed anti-devourer weapons. Exactly. Humans don't fight wars, we engineer solutions to eliminate threats. Our kinetic weapons use materials that disrupt devourer biometal. Our energy weapons operate on frequencies that cause their organic components to reject their mechanical parts. We don't just kill them, we make it impossible for them to adapt. The implications were staggering. Humanity had essentially turned itself into a weapon designed to fight a single enemy. Every aspect of their civilization was focused on this one goal. "What happens now?" asked Dr. Yelnev. "Will you help us reclaim our worlds?" Chen's expression grew complex. "Doctor, your worlds are gone. The devourers have consumed everything useful and moved on. But we can prevent them from reaching the galactic core, where most of the remaining population centers are located." She activated a strategic display showing defensive positions throughout the galaxy. Human fleets were positioned at every major hyperspace junction, creating a network of fortified positions that would funnel devourer forces into kill zones. "This is why we revealed ourselves now. The Coalition's resistance has served its purpose. You've given us intelligence on devourer tactics and forced them to reveal more of their capabilities. Now we need to consolidate all remaining forces for the real battle." "Which is?" Admiral Kothrak asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. "The Devourer Masters are sending a harvester fleet through dimensional space. It will arrive in approximately 6 months with enough force to consume this entire galaxy. We have that long to prepare a defense." The weight of this revelation settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. Everything they had experienced, the desperate evacuations, the fallen worlds, the death of entire civilizations, had been merely preliminary moves in a conflict beyond their comprehension. "Why should we trust you?" Captain Mordex asked bluntly. "You've manipulated our governments for decades. You allowed our worlds to burn while you watched from the shadows. How do we know you're not just another threat to be contained?" Chen nodded as if she'd expected this question. "Because, Captain, we're going to show you exactly what we're capable of. In 3 days, a Devourer probe fleet will enter the Centauri system. You'll observe firsthand how humans fight a real war." She stood, indicating the briefing was over. "Your crews will be given quarters and medical treatment. Your ships will be repaired using human technology. And you'll begin training with our weapons and tactics. Whether you trust us or not, the Harvester fleet is coming. We can face it together or watch the galaxy die." As the Coalition officers filed out, Veltar lingered. "Colonel, one more question. If your species was nearly wiped out by these creatures, what makes you think we can win this time?" Shen smiled, and, for the first time, Veltar saw something other than military professionalism in her expression. It was anticipation, maybe even hunger. "Because, Commander, the Devourers made one critical mistake when they destroyed Earth. They left us alive long enough to learn what they really are. And, once you truly understand your enemy..." She paused, looking out at the human fleet patrolling the system. Extinction becomes a matter of applied engineering. Outside the station, space seemed to ripple as massive human ships dropped out of hyperspace. These weren't the vessels that had rescued the convoy, these were something else entirely. Dreadnoughts the size of moons, carriers that could hold thousands of fighters, and, stranger things, that seemed to bend space around them. The real human fleet was arriving, and, with it, the galaxy would learn what happened when humanity went to war with the intention of winning absolutely. The Centauri system had once been home to a thriving trade hub where dozens of species exchanged goods and knowledge. Now it was a graveyard of twisted metal and organic matter, the remnants of what the Devourers had left behind after stripping the system of anything useful. Commander Veltar watched from the bridge of the human vessel Retribution as the Coalition observers prepared to witness humanity's true military capabilities. "Contact in 30 minutes, announced Captain James Harrison, the human officer who commanded this particular dreadnought. Unlike Colonel Chen's professional demeanor, Harrison carried himself with the casual confidence of someone who had fought this enemy many times before. "Coalition observers, you'll want to pay attention to our tactical displays. What you're about to see will change how you think about warfare." The human ship was a revelation in itself. Every surface was covered in weapons systems, sensors, and defensive measures that seemed to operate according to principles the Coalition didn't understand. The corridors hummed with energy that felt almost alive, and the crew moved with the synchronized precision of a single organism. "Captain," Veltar asked, "how many ships are in your fleet?" Harrison smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "That depends how you count. We've got 47 visible vessels, but you're not seeing the real force." Before Veltar could ask what he meant, space around them began to shimmer. Ships materialized from apparently empty vacuum, not dropping out of hyperspace, but simply becoming visible as if they had been there all along. Hundreds of human vessels revealed themselves, surrounding the Devourer probe fleet that was approaching the system. "Stealth technology," breathed Admiral Kothrak, who was observing from the flagship's command deck. "But our sensors should have detected mass displacement, gravity distortions, something." "Admiral," said Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the young human tactical officer monitoring their communications, "our stealth isn't about hiding from sensors. We exist in a slightly different phase of spacetime. To your instruments, we literally aren't there until we choose to be." The Devourer probe fleet consisted of 12 ships, each one a grotesque fusion of organic tissue and salvaged technology. They moved with the predatory grace that had made them so terrifying to Coalition forces. But something was different this time. They were hesitating, their formations tightening as if they sensed a trap. "They know something's wrong," observed Dr. Yilnath from her position at the science station. "Their behavior patterns are completely different from previous encounters." Captain Harrison nodded. "The Devourers learn from every engagement. They've started to recognize human energy signatures. That's why this won't be a normal battle." The tactical display showed the approaching enemy formation, but it also displayed something else, a three-dimensional map of local spacetime that included dimensions the Coalition didn't even know existed. The human fleet wasn't just positioned in normal space, they were spread across multiple layers of reality. "Beginning Phase 1, Harrison announced. "All Coalition personnel, observe carefully." The first wave of attack came from nowhere. Devourer ships simply began exploding, their hulls rupturing from within as if something was destroying them from the inside. No human weapons fired, no energy signatures appeared on the sensors, the enemy was just dying. "How are you doing that?" Veltar demanded. "Nanotechnology," Lieutenant Kim explained casually. "We seeded this system with self-replicating constructs 3 months ago. They've been infiltrating Devourer ships since they entered the outer system, dismantling them molecule by molecule." The surviving Devourer ships began to adapt, their biometal hulls shifting and changing as they developed immunity to the nanoscale assault. This was their species' greatest strength, the ability to evolve countermeasures in real time. But the humans had expected this. "Phase 2, Harrison ordered. The human fleet opened fire, but not with the kinetic weapons the Coalition had seen before. These were something entirely different, beams of energy that seemed to erase whatever they touched from existence. When they struck the Devourer ships, the targeted areas simply vanished, leaving geometric voids in the enemy hulls. "Reality deletion weapons," Dr. Yilnath whispered, her multiple eyes wide with shock. "You're actually unmaking matter at the quantum level. The Devourers can adapt to any weapon that operates within normal physical laws," Captain Harrison explained as his ship's main gun erased half of a Devourer cruiser. "So we developed weapons that operate outside those laws." The enemy fleet was adapting again, their ships beginning to phase in and out of visible reality as they developed their own dimensional shifting capabilities. But the humans had anticipated this as well. "Phase 3, Harrison announced. All Coalition personnel, you might want to hold on to something." Space around the battlefield began to twist. The stars themselves seemed to bend and warp as the human fleet activated weapons that manipulated gravity itself. The Devourer ships found themselves trapped in localized distortions where the laws of physics operated according to human specifications. "Gravity wells set to our advantage," Lieutenant Kim narrated. "Time dilation fields where our weapons age their hulls by centuries in seconds. Spatial loops that make their shots hit themselves. When you can rewrite the rules of engagement, adaptation becomes irrelevant." But what truly shocked the Coalition observers was what happened next. The human ships began to split apart, each one revealing that it was actually composed of thousands of smaller vessels. These microships moved like schools of fish, surrounding and penetrating the Devourer formation with impossible coordination.
Individual consciousness networking, Harrison explained, noting their amazement. Every human in this fleet is linked through quantum entanglement. We don't just coordinate, we think as one organism when necessary.
The battle became something beyond conventional warfare. Human microships phased through Devourer hulls, appearing inside enemy vessels to plant exotic matter bombs that exploded in dimensions the Coalition couldn't perceive. The Devourers tried to adapt, but, for every countermeasure they developed, the humans had already prepared 3 alternative approaches.
"This is impossible," Admiral Kothrak transmitted from his observation post.
"No species should be capable of this level of technological advancement." Captain Harrison's expression grew somber.
"Admiral, this isn't advancement, it's specialization.
Every human born in the last 2 centuries has been genetically modified, cybernetically enhanced, and trained from birth for one purpose: killing Devourers. We're not a species anymore, we're a living weapon system." As if to emphasize his point, Harrison activated a personal display that showed his own biological readings. His body contained technology the Coalition couldn't identify, his nervous system operated at superhuman speeds, and his brain showed activity patterns that suggested he was simultaneously conscious in multiple dimensions. "The Devourers took our humanity," he continued, watching as the last enemy ship was dismantled by reality-warping weapons.
"So we became something they couldn't consume."
The battle was over in less than an hour, but what remained wasn't debris, it was nothing. The human fleet had so thoroughly erased the Devourer force that not even atoms remained to mark their presence.
Space itself seemed cleaner, as if a cosmic infection had been excised. "Coalition observers," Harrison announced, "this was a minor engagement. The probe fleet you just watched us eliminate was roughly equivalent to the force that destroyed the Andromedan home system. The implications hit the Coalition representatives like a physical blow. The enemy force that had seemed invincible was utterly insignificant compared to human capabilities."
"Captain," Veltar said slowly, "if you can do this to Devourer forces, why do you need the Coalition at all?" Harrison turned to face him, and, for a moment, Veltar saw something deeply alien in the human's eyes, not malevolence, but a kind of cosmic weariness that came from fighting a war across multiple dimensions of reality. "Because, Commander, the Harvester fleet isn't just Devourers. They're bringing something else, the entities that created the Devourers in the first place. Our weapons can unmake matter and rewrite physics, but these entities exist beyond even those concepts.
We need every consciousness, every perspective, every unique approach to problem solving that the galaxy can provide."
The human fleet began to reorganize, with ships folding back into their composite forms and others phasing back into their dimensional hideposts. But, as they prepared to leave the system, they revealed one more surprise. A massive structure materialized in the heart of the Centauri system, not a ship, but a space station the size of a planet. Its surface was covered in defensive installations, shipyards, and structures that seemed to extend into dimensions that hurt to look at directly. "Fortress Prime," Lieutenant Kim explained.
"One of 47 such installations throughout the galaxy. Each one is capable of manufacturing an entire fleet in a matter of days." Dr. Yilneth stared at the readings flowing across her instruments. "How long have these been here?" "We've been building them for 200 years, Harrison replied.
"Hidden in pocket dimensions, powered by artificial stars, crewed by humans who have never seen normal space. The Devourers destroyed our worlds, so we built better ones." As the Retribution prepared to jump back to Haven's Gate, Veltar found himself grappling with a new understanding of their situation. Humanity hadn't just survived the Devourer apocalypse, they had transcended it, becoming something that existed on a level of reality that made traditional concepts of civilization irrelevant.
"Captain," he asked, "when this war is over, assuming we win, what happens to the rest of us? Where do we fit in a galaxy dominated by beings like you?"
Harrison was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the space where the battle had taken place. When he finally spoke, his voice carried undertones that suggested he was communicating on multiple levels simultaneously.
"Commander, we've been asking ourselves that same question for 2 centuries.
We became this powerful because we had to, because the alternative was the complete extinction of consciousness in this universe. But, power like this, it changes you in ways you can't imagine. He paused, manipulating controls that existed in dimensions Veltar couldn't see.
Maybe when the real war is over, we can find a way to be human again. Maybe you can help us remember what that means.
As they jumped to hyperspace, Veltar realized that the Coalition wasn't just fighting for survival against the Devourers, they were fighting for the soul of the galaxy itself, trying to find a balance between the power necessary to win and the values that made victory worthwhile. Behind them, Fortress Prime continued its work, manufacturing weapons and ships for a war that would determine whether consciousness itself had a future in this reality. And, in dimensions beyond counting, other human installations prepared for the arrival of enemies that had never before encountered a species willing to sacrifice everything, including their own humanity, for the chance at ultimate victory. The stars watched in silence, waiting to see which force would prove stronger, the hunger that consumed universes, or the rage of a species that had lost everything and refused to let it happen again.